talking counterfeits today. So I'm chairman of the committee that publishes AS 5553. Some of you may have heard of it. It's made the rounds a bit. Rob wasn't exactly right. I didn't author it. I herded the cats that did. And let me tell you, that's a serious herd to deal with. But let's go through the slides and we'll talk a little bit more about 5553 when we get there. The counterfeit issue is broad, and we have I'm going to use we for SAE. That's really Judith. She can say we better than I can, but we'll say we have a suite of standards to address a number of issues in the counterfeits arena. We deal with OEMs, the industry groups, testing laboratories. We're all involved with this together to try to figure out how to solve this scourge that we call counterfeits. And I don't think anybody can solve it, so we just kind of, what we like to say, mitigate the risk. Involved in this from the government side, you'll see a lot of US-centric government participation for sure. You've got all branches of the military, NASA, FAA. Everybody's got some concerns with counterfeits. They're differing levels, but let's face it, the attention that counterfeits have gotten over the last 10 years or so has been highly focused by government regulations. Oh, some of our industry members, I'm not going to read down the list. I mean, Edna will be happy, or Edna, there we go. Enda will be happy that I'm not going to just read my charts. But you'll see we've got a broad group of industry participants there, and the industry associations that are helping us out, participating in our G19 committees. The next slide. Oh, the next slide is all the members are taken out. I forgot. Thanks, Rob. So what we got here is a list of the number of standards kind of in a chronological order. 2010, another organization, PSMC, started work on some issues regarding counterfeit material. They quickly moved beyond their scope. The SAE stepped in and they formed the G21 committee and published some standards on the material. In October of the same year was their initial draft of 6174. It was based on the AS 5553 concepts where you deal with authorized sources. So the best way to eliminate counterfeits are to buy from sources that you know and trust. And they took that template and rolled that into their 6174. It's been revised for the government inputs and finally published May 2012. So here's some of the standards that we have. I talked a little bit about 5553. That standard is intended for integrators of electronic components. If you integrate electronic components, this standard is applicable. What we've found is for a long time, it was the only standard we have, and it was flowed down to everybody. So you would find distributors and part manufacturers and COT suppliers all being asked to comply to 5553, and it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't written with that in mind, and it didn't work that way. Again, I touched on 6174 earlier. That was the standard developed, originally started PSMC, developed to cover all the material. The first group that stepped up to publish another standard was part of our G19D committee, and they were addressing the risks posed by independent distributors. So back in the day, it was kind of the wild, wild west. Anybody that wanted to sell parts would go pick some up on the market, eBay, wherever they found them, turn around and sell them to the OEMs to integrate them in. And we didn't have any way to differentiate the conscientious independent distributors that we need because we can't keep all of our obsolete parts available. So we got to keep those guys in the loop. That standard was written to help us differentiate between the guys we'd like to do business with and the guys we'd rather not. 6496 was written in response to issues with regards to the authorized distribution chains. There were questions about how you handled returns specifically, and to their credit, the authorized distributors stepped up, published a standard in record time, and it's been very successful in helping us ensure that our authorized distribution chain are addressing some of the risks posed by the counterfeit parts as well. Finally, we have the 6171. That one's been a while in the making. Mr. DeMasi was the original leader of that. Too bad he's not here because he could talk for the whole damn seminar on 6171. I think it took him 4 years to get it to ballot the first time, and it finally hit the street. I think there's a chart later that has the date on it, but it's out there, and it's a good standard. It gives us test methods to test parts that we suspect may be counterfeit, or rephrase, to test parts to mitigate the risk of being counterfeit, and has really helped us in that space with the 6081 world. So the 6081, 6171 play together very nicely. Here's a quick look at all of the committees that we've got. We've got the G19CI, that's the committee that I chair that we publish 5553. The G19D, which is the independent brokers we talked about. The AD committee is the one that's the authorized distributors. You can read the rest of the charts. Note of interest there, the G19T, the definitions task group. If anybody's been working longer than Dan has, then on 6171, it's this poor group. Kirsten has done yeoman's work and finally got an agreement on what the definition of a counterfeit part is 10 years later. And by the way, not all the committees are using that definition because they still don't agree. When you get your stick, you can put that one in your computer and take a long look at it. It lists a number of the various industry organizations involved in the counterfeit parts activities and some of the work that they do. Aerospace standards, here's the dates. We got 5550, Rev B of 5553 was published September 2016. And we got a couple of other ones in there you'll see. We've got the criteria for 5553, and we've got, which is published in 2014, by the way, that's only one revision out of date. It's in work to have a new revision. And the 6171 was finally published last year. And the accreditation process for test laboratories, you can see, is still in work. I think one thing you should take away from, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds with some of these standards, but the thing is that we have an integrated approach to try to address the counterfeit issues. And so what we've got is a suite of standards to work through the supply chain, whether you're at the top with the integrator or whether you're at the bottom as a part manufacturer authorized distributor. The JDEC guys are handling some of the manufacturers, and you'll see it here. And it's not a really, it's a pretty good achievement, because not only do you have to work up and down the supply chain, but you've got a number of organizations involved in this from the functional standpoint. So this is one of the, for me, this has been the first issue I've ever been involved with that's really, truly equal parts supplier management, supply chain issues, equal parts quality, inspection, is it a good part, is it a bad part, and equal parts engineering to deal with the risks. So not only do you have differing of opinions from individuals, you've got differing approaches from where you're at in the supply chain, and you've had to come together with differing functions within those supply chains. And it's been quite an achievement to work through some of these issues with these various standards. More dates. I'm not sure you guys want to see all of those dates, but the highlights there are the, you can see the terms and definitions one. That just went into ballot. So we expect that one to be out real soon, so we can change that one from in development to actually having a date. The other one there, you'll see that was published in 2011. We're going to have to talk with Fred Shipp a little bit, but we're going to have to, I think that one was superseded by 6081 to a large part. This is a new tool that's coming out in that standard associated with 6171. It's the idea of this tool is to calculate what types of testing you ought to be doing in association with the parts you've got and the types of risks that are associated with it. So you'll see here that it's got broad references to the 6171 in test methods, but this will help you decide which of those test methods to apply to those various parts that you're picking up from. Now, I don't know what your experiences are with the counterfeit stuff, but we have DFARS, and one of the questions we get was, I'm going to talk 5553 here. It's kind of our main standard. It's been the centerpiece for a long time. And I get lots and lots of comments with regards to, why do you have these requirements? Why are you specifying them the way you are? And I have to remind everybody it's a consensus, so there's no single opinion that goes into any of these requirements or how they're written. And we're also trying to write a standard that can be used up and down through the supply chain. Like I said, anybody that assembles a couple of EEE components has got to have some processes in place to address counterfeits. And the processes in place where a company like mine, like Boeing at the top as an integrator, will be significantly different than one of our major OEMs building systems in boxes. And go through their supply chain, you get down to guys building, power supplies or a door with a wire running through it, right? So there's all kinds of different levels that 5553 has to address. So the first thing we have to do is write a process-based standard that says, define your processes that deal with these issues. And then you roll in the fact that the DFARS came out. I don't know if many of you are familiar with those government DFARS. The DFARS come out, and you read those DFARS, and at first you scratch your head, and then you say, oh, I think I got it. Then you sit down around the table with the rest of the committee, and you quickly realize that everybody has a little differing opinion on what that means. And so, folks like Tony go, well, we got to find out who it is. Who's the guy in government that can tell us what that means? We're going to go knocking on doors. And we knocked on a lot of doors, Tony, didn't we? We never found an answer. We never found that guy that could tell us what it means. We found some folks that would say, if we audit you, this is what we're going to look for. We found some folks that said, well, this is what the legislation said, and we wrote the DFARS from the legislation. But nobody was willing to stand up and say, this is what you have to do to comply. So 5553 is our answer as what it takes to not only comply with the DFARS, but address the risks as a whole. Because as much as we would like 5553 to directly reflect the DFARS, we've got a whole lot of industry and a whole lot of businesses that don't get these DFAR requirements. And if we don't act at least on the basis in the same way, then all we're doing is fragmenting everything, driving costs into the commercial side, the military side that we just don't need. So it's been a long fought battle. We're in the process of working the next revision that I thought was going to take 3 or 4 months. We're pushing about 12 right now, I think. And I'm not sure the end is in sight, but we'll get it published and we'll have a new standard. Okay, that's pretty much what I've got.